Hey everybody, Madison here with Health by Ratio, and in this video we are going to talk about how we can self-reset our SI joint alignment for some immediate relief. Health by Ratio is an online group of licensed physical therapists, orthopedic movement specialists, and functional health coaches that work holistically together with our clients to help them rehabilitate from recurring and chronic injuries and pain while bridging the gap back to the active lives that they love to live. Okay, so in this video, like I said, we're going to be covering a technique on how we can self-reset our own SI joint alignment. And the first thing that we got to do is assess which direction our hips are actually out of alignment in. In this video, we're going to talk about specifically a forward versus backward tilt of the hips, which is a really common way that we can get our hips out of alignment. Now, there is some lateral and twisting aspects of SI joint alignment that can come into play as well, but here's a really good starting point for us to correct our alignment. Now, as great as this technique is to help, and it's something that we teach our clients to do all the time, it's also incredibly important if this is a recurring challenge for you where you're constantly getting your SI joint out of alignment. We need to figure out what is causing it. So what in our movement patterns, what in our postural positions are we doing throughout the day that are creating the tightness and the weakness on one side versus the other that's pulling us out of alignment. So if you guys want some help with that, that's something that my team and I do for free. We'd be happy to connect and be able to give you some great understandings of what's happening in your body and how to prevent this from occurring in the future. But if you're in the midst of SI joint misalignment, let's get going on how to get some immediate relief right now. So first things first, like I said, we got to assess what direction our hips are rotated in. The best way to do that is to look at what's called the ASIS process on the hips. This is a little bit difficult to find for some of us, but once you find it, you'll be able to understand. So what I recommend that you do is probably record yourself here because you're going to want to be able to position your camera so that it's almost in line with your hip. So putting your camera on like a countertop, for instance, is probably an appropriate height. And what we're going to do is find the tops of our hip bones. You're going to hit record. You can even put yourself in selfie mode. You're going to find the tops of your hip bones right here. And we're going to glide down those hip bones. So sliding our fingers down the ridges of our hip bones. And we're going to find at kind of the top 45-degree corner this little bony node that I can, if I'm rubbing my fingers along it, I can feel there's this little bony node right there. That's the ASIS. So again, I'm dragging my fingers down, and as soon as the hip basically starts dropping straight down, that's where you're going to find that little bony node there that we're searching for. Well, we want to get both of our fingers right underneath that bony node and facing each other. So you want them pointed directly at each other here, not where they're down at an angle. But this can then, if you freeze frame, you can get an accurate depiction of whether the hips are even here, like if the fingers are dead even, or if one finger's a little bit lower than the other, and one hip a little bit higher than the other. So we can see if there's a difference from one side to the other. We want to notate which side is lower in this case. So let's say my left hip is the one where my finger is a little bit lower than my right finger. Okay, so now I'm going to go through this sequence to help get this hip back into alignment, because basically that means that my left hip is rotated forward anteriorly a little bit more than my right. So often that means my right hip, or in this case, my left hip flexor is pulling on me here, versus perhaps my right hamstring can be pulling on me too far the other direction. But often it's actually more common for it to be the hip flexor that's pulling us out of alignment more so than the hamstring of the opposite leg. But either way, we're going to address both right now. So how we do this is we can get a foam roller, a yoga block, something along those lines that's firm, that we can squeeze between our legs. And we're going to start with, in a seated position, an activation where we're going to push into this foam roller for 5 seconds, squeezing, kind of relaxing the pelvic floor as we do, but squeezing the knees together for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then we'll remove that. We're going to place our hands to the outside of our legs, and we're going to push against those hands for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then we're going to do one more squeeze. Again, for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now we're going to transfer to the ground. And this is where we got to notate which hip is rotated forward. So for me, this example, I'm using my left hip. So what I'm going to do here is I need to activate my glute, the opposite of the hip flexor, the one that's pulling me forward. I got to work on the glute on the one side, and then I'm going to engage the hip flexor on the other. There's a variety of different ways to do this. We could wrap a belt around our legs and do a push-pull statically into it. We could have a broomstick handle between both legs. I'm just going to use my hands here. I'm going to have my legs up. I'm going to hold on to my knees here. And with my left leg, I'm going to push downward against my hands, trying to think about squeezing my glute as I do so. And the right knee, I'm going to push upwards into my hand and get a good push-pull right now in my hips. I'm going to do that for 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I can relax out of it, shake the legs a little bit. I'm going to do it again. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Really focusing on engaging that glute and hamstring on the left leg for this example as best I can. After that second static hold, I'm going to get my foam roller yoga block again, and I'm going to do one more squeeze between the knees. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And in that moment, I might feel some pops occur in my pelvic floor. That's okay. It's going to be the pelvis that's adjusting. You might not feel the adjustments initially, especially if some of these tissues are really stubborn and gunked up. It doesn't mean that your hips didn't adjust. That might just not have been enough for your hips to actually feel like there was a pop in the pelvic floor region. It's okay. Still probably did good work. Then, just to stabilize better, I'm going to come up, if you can, into a glute bridge here. So I'm going to engage my glutes. I'm going to drive my heels into the ground. And I just want to fire my glutes a little bit and hold this. If I feel comfortable enough, I can do a little bit of a marching glute bridge where I pick one leg up, set it down, pick one leg up, set it down. And I'm trying to keep my hips as level as possible. I'm not going to let them drop to the ground as I'm doing this. But I'm really focusing on squeezing those glutes to stabilize my hips. And that's the sequence. Now, like I said, if this is a recurring issue for us, we do want to address any ongoing mobility concerns. So in my case, I might have to really work on doing some deep tissue work to my hip flexor, to my psoas on this left-hand side to keep it from consistently pulling me out of alignment. That might also draw me to figuring out why my hip flexor is so active on that side. Is it how I sit? Is it something that when I walk, is my ankle causing me to recruit that hip flexor too much? I'm not using my glutes very much. Is it how I stand? There are things that are going to be causing this chronic tension. So I need to do the mobility work, but then I also need to address the actual potential movement concerns that are impacting this. And if I can address those root causes that are specific to my body, I can get myself moving back to full ranges of stable motion, to balance, to harmony, and I can keep this SI joint in alignment on an ongoing basis. Now, this technique, you are more than welcome to do more than once. As a matter of fact, if you're still feeling out of alignment, this is something that you can do several times a day for the preceding days. But once that SI joint discomfort goes away, don't continue to do this. You can also go too far the other direction. So I always would encourage you to assess your hips. If you still see that alignment off, great, do this. If they start looking even, don't continue to do this single-sided adjustment, because then we can move ourselves the opposite way. And again, guys, if you want any like one-on-one coaching from my team and I, we'd be happy to do it, and we do it for free. We would connect over a video assessment to see how and why your body is doing what it's doing. To get scheduled for that, we offer 2 free calls. The first one is really just to get to know you and to understand what your body's been through and what your goals are. And then the second one is the video assessment. You're more than welcome to click our calendar below this video to access our calendar and pick a day and time that works best for you. All right, talk soon.